Season 2 of the Strange, Rare, and Peculiar podcast, a place to learn more about homeopathy, deepening your knowledge, expanding your universe of possibility in the world of health and well-being through homeopathy.
Homeo what?
Homeo what?
Good evening. Guess what?
What?
Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Da-na-na-na-na-na.
Cup of tea, cheers. HHN's 4th birthday.
Four.
You have fuzz on your head.
Thank you. For
4 years. Homeopathy Help Now started 4 years ago this week.
that's, well, is that a big deal or what? Why are you even mentioning it?
Well, I have aged significantly.
As evidenced by?
Gray hair.
What about me? Look at that.
You have a white beard.
Damn.
Is that from HHN?
Yeah, I think it is.
Really?
Nah.
No, I didn't think so. Yeah, it's amazing. So Homeopathy Help Now was born. So we thought we'd do a little podcast talk about that.
How was it born?
It was born out of necessity. Well, first, though, let's just go back a second because we are going to be talking about this at the Joint American Homeopathy Conference.
The Jack.
The Jack. We call it the Jack.
Get back to the point.
Okay, back
What's
to the point.
point?
So last year, is there ever a point? Last year at the Jack, we were talking about, well, I was bringing up, when I was on the board of the NCH at that point, and I was bringing up the fact that I would have loved to have seen some more research at the homeopathy conference and sort of a different format. And this year is the 50th anniversary, so it's going to be amazing. There are lots and lots of people, but the really wanting to present scholarship and research and what are people working on. Here she is. She comes for every podcast, doesn't she?
Well,
Hildegard of Bingen,
that's
the
not
cat.
actually going to work.
She's not. Yeah,
No.
She's not coming up on me today.
No.
With the cord. Anyway, and so we had this conversation about, I was asking, can we bring in more, more evidence, more research, more projects? What are people doing? It's, and there's, I sort of love the mixture of things where on one hand, we're sharing with our colleagues and with students sort of what, ways of learning, and it's often coming from experience, and and I think that's really good, and it's an opportunity for everyone to be exposed to different things, right? But at the end of the day, there is, I think, a need for here in America for us to really get the community conversation around research happening in a different way. So we didn't want to do a whole conference, and then I think Lynn's follow-up was, I'm pretty sure it was Lynn, who said, then what about a research track? Which I'm really super excited about because we've put together we've got 4 presentations. I'm doing the opening, Al's doing the closing, and in between we have 2 naturopaths, 2 amazing academics, researchers, and great presenters. So one is Elizabeth Rice, Betsy Rice, of whom I am a super fan, and then Kieran, who you met in Korea, right?
Cooley. Yep.
Kieran Cooley, yeah.
I might have even been before then. He's a Canadian nat.
Yeah.
From Toronto, I believe. Well, at least works in Toronto, and has just had so much experience in formalizing, improving, raising the bar, producing excellent, relevant research at a level that we've just not been doing in homeopathy.
No.
And he's a good one.
Yeah. And so what we've got is 4 presentations, and they are all, it's the whole day Saturday, and they each sort of interact with each other. So my opening is sort of an overview of what kind of research we have been doing, and specifically talking about Homeopathy Help Now, because we've got 5,000 cases that have come through our helpline. And so that's the acute care. And then there's we get between 500 and 600 chronic cases a year through the Academy of Homeopathy Education, Home Foundation, so the students and supervision and everything. So it's a really robust amount of research. Anyway, so it seemed like a good time to introduce the research track and invite people to join us there. And I think it's really relevant, and it's where I feel like it's where we need to be as a community, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of listening and going, I know where you're going with this, and I might have kind of just, if you said to me, talk about what's coming up for us at Jack, I would be sort of saying it differently, but you're being very polite. And so what I would have said is that as you become wizened and grizzled...
Speak for yourself with the grizzled part.
Speaking very, very much for myself.
I'd like to think wizened. Grizzled, maybe not so much.
No, I'm not even talking about wise. It's just, just an old dog, fundamentally.
Sure.
The utility and the value and the things that you hear at conferences, from my point of view, is just statistically, percentage-wise, got less and less and less and less and less as I've gone on. And to the extent that sometimes there's been times that I've been at conferences, I'm just raising my eyebrows going, what am I listening to?
Yeah.
This isn't anything that I'm familiar with. And last time I looked, doesn't seem to be anything to do with homeopathy. And so there has been a number of comments made, not just personally, but in the public domain about, come on, where's the stuff?
Right.
As a profession, where's the information that drives changes in clinical decision making? Where's the relevant stuff? And it could be about Montaigne talking about crosstalk and mechanism of whatever, but even that seems out of range sometimes. And
but some of that may be out of range, but I also think that's inspirational.
Well, it can be, totally.
Right.
But so that's how I would have said it, is that we heard enough, comments about the direction and the quality of talks to say, let's try something.
Yeah, I think.
Let's step it up.
I mean, I really...
Care for some more tea,
I would love some more tea, thank you.
La-di-da.
Yeah.
Notice I took the thingy out.
That's good. I think I want... Oh, my gosh. The video thing, though, I think will be helpful, like for people who maybe have listened to a podcast or two and you've got all the sounds and the things, now you're getting the slurping and whatnot.
So I hope I'm not saying anything out of order by that, but I've been too embarrassed too many times.
Yeah.
And to the extent that I think it's very important that teachers, academics, especially responsible for a generation of students coming through, it's really important that those students see a jobbing, working, researching academic.
Yeah.
There's not enough of them. I can't think of anyone else that does it. There's very few around the traps. You know what I mean from an undergraduate school point of view. And so, I do it, and and of course I enjoy it. Yeah. I don't enjoy the build-up to it. And I always say, the first thing I say whenever I'm on a conference stage is, why on earth do I do this to myself?
Why? When you're on the...
I just get so wound up like a tin of spaghetti.
Oh, I've never noticed. Sorry.
That's why our joint talks sometimes... they've always gone well.
Yeah, they're totally good. But you do get worked up.
Yeah.
Which is fair.
And so...
we also do the opposite in preparation. I fast and you feed. I'll never forget the day I saw you preparing for a talk by eating about 10,000 calories of fat. I mean, you were having like a burger, bacon cheeseburger and fries.
I can't imagine what you're talking about. That doesn't sound like me in a presentation. I usually just run on coffee, and that's all, and then eat massively afterwards.
No, you were eating. It was in Reston the last time.
Well, they had good burgers.
Right. See how quickly that changes. Anyway, so coming back to it.
Anyway, so you're doing a plug here for Jack. We've got You're talking,
Yeah.
by the way, just one point of order.
Yeah.
Because on the schedule,
Yeah.
I'm after you. And so in the later morning, I don't know why, I just am. And so I'm going to be talking about the PGRN.
Well, that we need to discuss that because you're doing the wrap anyway. But that's okay.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
And you're talking about HHN.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that brings us back to today.
So this week. So it's.
Can I just say that technically it's not today?
It was Wednesday, the 20th.
Because it was the 20th of March.
Yeah.
I've locked it into my head as
Me
the
too.
last time I saw you for about 6 months.
No, well, it started before that. That was when we went officially open to the public. But from the day we got back from New Zealand. So the story goes, Al and I were in New Zealand and we're meant to be staying another week. And we heard that things
We never got our money back on that Airbnb either.
We didn't. We were staying with Al's parents, and we were meant to be there for another however many days, and then we were going to the North Island to have a little holiday before we came back on Waiheke Island. And
Steve.
we started to hear that things in America were looking somewhat grim, and so we came home a week early, and we arrived in America on, I believe, the 12th.
We did.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I'm thinking that we must have left about the 1st, or maybe the 28th of February or something like that. And I'm just wondering what actually was going on to make us think that it was actually going to work. Because in those 10 days, 12 days, things changed massively.
Well, you remember, I have pictures of us getting on the airplane and all the people, the flight attendant, no, not the people working in the airport were all wearing masks.
Me getting patted down again.
You got patted down. But that's the only time I'd ever seen that anywhere but in China, right?
Yeah, it's very familiar in Asia.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we decided to come back. Actually, one of our students who worked in the military, she sent me an email and she said, I'm hearing rumblings that international travel might become difficult. Thank God if she hadn't, I think it snapped us into taking it really seriously because it was really easy to not pay attention to it when we were, in New Zealand. Anyway, and so it took us 2 days to get home because we had to teach, and we were stuck in a hotel. Anyway, we got back, and it was the travel ban was implemented during
Just
the time
imagine
we were
that, because
traveling.
I couldn't have got back in.
No,
Not with the visa I had at that time.
no. No, you were already
I was
had your
legit?
green card. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, but and so I arrived in America on the 12th, whatever. It was a Thursday. I just remember we got in late Wednesday night.
I remember
Thursday.
Houston was dead.
Houston, there was nobody
and
in the
Philly,
airport.
there was not one person in the airport.
It was
amazing.
very strange.
Yep.
And so then there was the Thursday, and then on Friday I got my first call about COVID. And by the end of, I want to say that weekend, maybe by Monday, I had 45 cases because a community that I serve was Ground Zero, a community in Brooklyn. And people were so sick and it happened so quickly. And so we had to do something. And I couldn't keep up with the people that were reaching out to me. We had no data at that point at all. And I think the other thing that was really difficult was that there were people who were making things up, who were, before anything even happened, there were, the genus epidemicus idea was being floated, and it was whatever remedies.
In the homeopathy circles.
All over, not just in homeopathy circles, on Facebook.
But that's what I meant.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
you mean there's this epidemic coming towards us? Oh, let's pretend we're Hahnemann. It's 1805. There's scarlet fever coming.
Right.
Let's work out what the remedies are going to be for this, as if one person, and work from there.
No, they weren't doing it that way at all.
Oh. Why weren't they doing that?
Oh, I mean, so it was terrifying. And, one of the things that I've always loved about Home Foundation and was, when we started it, so if you haven't heard the story, the naming, it's a homonym for home, your house, your place, like a place for everyone. And then Om, the sound of universal resonance, because the spelling is HOHM. Anyway, and I was never so grateful that we had established a community with communications like vehicles of communications in place. We were already using Slack at that point, I believe. We would have had to have been, because I don't think we could have done it. And so what we were able to do was get a group of people together really quickly. And so I got a handful of practitioner colleagues and friends. And then we built an admin team of students. And
There's a gap. Are you okay if I just fill in the gaps?
are you talking about the research thing?
No.
Oh.
Because what I recall is that our students are putting their hands up and saying, how can I help? What can I do? What can I do? What can I do?
Well, yeah, that is absolutely
And
true.
we're listening to that for, the first day, the second day, the third day, and you and I are probably meeting over dinner and going, how are we going to do this? I mean, we've got to do something, have to do something. So there was this energy that needed to be harnessed as well.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so a woman who was a student at the time, Jamie Bell, also happened to be incredibly organized, and she had a lot of tech experience. And so she kind of ran point on getting our systems in place. There are always a lot of people, but I just remember in the very early days, Jamie being the point person. And then we had our practitioner team. And, one of the things for me was, being a student of Hahnemannian homeopathy is to look at all of the ways in which Hahnemann sort of postulated and then implemented his system and different iterations of the system. And so epidemics is a big part of it. And, having done Jeremy's Dynamis course, right, where Jeremy shares Dynamis course. So that was back in, good, you're doing to me what I do to you. Very nice. Give me 5. So that would have been 2004 to 2007, right? And that was right around that time. And so he taught epidemic theory and everything as a part of it. But at that time, it was also when he and Camilla were first starting to put the feelers out into Tanzania and developing the project around, how to deal with HIV/AIDS. And it was, whether I remember this accurately or maybe I've mythologized this, but I remember Jeremy talking about it thinking it through in terms of Hahnemann's epidemic theory. And then fast forward however many years later, the epidemic course, he published his epidemic course, which I did twice. And so I found myself really fascinated with this idea. And if you're sort of not at the level in your homeopathy training where you've been exposed to the idea around epidemics, it's Aphorisms 100, 101, and 102. And Kent's third lecture kind of talks about it a little bit. But the idea is that when there's an epidemic, it is always new and different. And you mentioned the scarlet fever epidemic. That was what year? 1795?
Well, there was. I said 1805.
I think it was.
But there was another one.
There were two. There were 2 scarlet fever
epidemics. And then
epidemics.
there was the cholera.
Right. But even before the first edition of the Organon, Hahnemann had already dealt with epidemics. He already had that under his belt. I'm pretty sure my dates are right. It was before 1810. Right?
For the scarlet fever?
Yeah.
There were 2. One in the 1800s, one in the 1700s,
right.
1790s, and one in the 18
okay,
something.
Good. Then I was...
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So the thing was that Hahnemann, with the first time that scarlet fever came through, and I think he says it was the synonym smooth something or other, right? Identifying a very particular expression of this disease. Anyway, and he found that belladonna was the remedy that solved the problem. He also realized that he could give a dose of belladonna preemptively, prophylactically, and someone in the household, so in the face of clear and present danger, recognizing...
I'm sorry, say that again?
In the face of clear and present danger.
Got it, thank you.
He recognized that the remedy that was curative could be used prophylactically. But I think this idea of in the face of clear and present danger is really important because...
Critical.
It's totally critical. And we'll talk about that in a sec. But so basically belladonna. And he goes, oh, this is amazing. I also can give people a vial of belladonna or a piece of paper with belladonna, pellets in it or whatever, globules, and then give instructions for how to take it. And so in that one fell swoop, he both solved an epidemic and and proved out the theory of prophylaxis. It was pretty amazing. Then it comes around again, so whatever the second date was after 1800, and he says, oh, actually, belladonna isn't working this time. It's aconite. And so in that example, it reinforces aphorism 100, which is even if you call it by the same name, right? A coronavirus is a coronavirus is a coronavirus. Scarlet fever, each epidemic will have its own nature and flavor and therefore must be treated individually, right? So that was a really big deal. So he demonstrated through his experience that it was not to be replicated, right, by using the same remedy just because of the same disease name. And then he goes on to talk about further ideas around that, well, in aphorisms, 80 and 81. Okay, so aphorism 100 is it's always new. So that's the first problem that people were kind of getting on board with, was making an assumption that they could look at similar disease processes in the past. Yeah. The second is, so aphorisms 101 and 102 are about the system, how we systematically go about solving the problem. And this was, honestly, I think, if I think about the hardest part, it was the 102. So the 102 is about how you don't understand what's happening in the aggregate until you have seen a lot of cases, not 5 cases, not 10 cases, not 100 cases. In a global pandemic.
Or reading the newspaper and listening to common symptoms. Or
getting your information from one country that might be seeing one expression of the disease. So, for example, a whole bunch of people were saying, I think it was in Pakistan, they were using camphor to great success. Yeah. So somebody reported it, and then everybody's taking camphora. They're doing a protocol of camphora. I mean, it was insane. We never had one case in all the cases that we did here through HHN, not one camphora case. And we tried it a few times. And we had people who came to us really, really sick that instead of reaching out for help, they were just following what they heard from, Facebook, somebody on Facebook, probably some reputable people as well. Anyway, so the whole idea, though, is that you've got to take a whole lot of cases, and you need people who are going to be focused on collecting the data, compiling the data, and synthesizing the data, and looking at every practitioner and their cases, not for common symptoms, but for the strange, rare, and peculiar symptom, or the characteristic symptoms of the particular expression of the disease in this time. And I think it's only now in hindsight, 4 years later, that I think we stopped doing our 102 too soon. I take responsibility for that.
You stopped looking for strange characteristic symptoms? Well,
we went back to treating people individually in probably 2022, because it was just really muddied at a certain point. But I kind of think, well, it doesn't matter.
No, it does. Can I tell you why it does matter?
Yeah.
Because much later, I just recognise this, for my personal enthusiasm for asking and then answering questions, but doing it systematically and with method, means that everything is a bit slow. So, for example, we've published 10 articles
right.
on our experiences of treating COVID.
Which I'll be talking about those articles at the conference.
But one of them, and it's only one of them because it was the one that was in the strictest peer-reviewed journal, concludes with the statement that some other authors have concluded that in this epidemic, the genus epidemicus was and still is unknown, and raising questions about the quality of the prescribing or raising questions about the theory itself. And the final statement we made was, our findings in this paper are contrary to that statement.
Yeah.
Because it was clear the number of
we had
the
a working
ballpark
we totally had a working genus. Actually, so let me I'm glad you brought that up, because this is the thing. So here we are taking all these cases, and I should say that before we embarked on it, you and I had the conversation that we absolutely positively must be systematic in our data collection. We needed to collect public health and epidemiological information, as well as the information about the process of what we did, right? I mean, that was really key. Anyway, so we're taking all these cases, and right away I reached out to Jeremy and I was like, look, actually, no, I tell a lie. It was the other way around. Well, I think two things were happening at the same time. I was reaching out for help because I was getting all these cases, and we had clients in the same community. But at the same time, he was putting together what he calls the epidemic, right? The people who are working on it. And it became clear that we already had this system in place, don't replicate it. And then that happened probably only maybe 2 or 3 weeks in. That would have been by April.
I remember doing some spring gardening,
Yeah.
listening to a podcast.
Because I think we were 7 countries at one point, and we were meeting regularly, and there was all kinds of data collection, and Jeremy was kind of the point person for all the different countries. We were all feeding that information together, and I think we're the only group that's still together operating in this similar way than we started. The group in Israel still operates, but I think they've got a little bit of a different set of parameters. Anyway, so we were collecting all the data, and then we would meet, and in the beginning, we didn't just have meetings. I had my Zoom room open, I think, for days at a time. We were taking cases at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, take a nap, get up, do another one. And then we just were constantly meeting. And I remember something that really struck me was one of my colleagues, who's a medical homeopath, who was with us in the very beginning. She said, I can't do this. It's really triggering for doing shifts in the ER and stuff. It was, it was so intense. It was so intense. Anyway, in the beginning, as Hahnemann says, you don't even know what you're looking at. You have no idea. And so I'll never forget the first characteristic symptom. So we realized very early on that people were losing their sense of smell. But I had a case of somebody with really sensitive smell. And I remember got on with Jeremy immediately. I was like, oh my gosh, right? Because then we had a polarity inside of the case. And that then opened up, another perspective on how to look at what we were seeing. But, the epidemic changed over time, and not just like, there was, OG COVID, and then there was whatever Delta and Omicron and all of that. And then there was the introduction of the vaccine. And then there were, all of the introduction of alternative therapies, whether it was hydroxychloroquine or whatever. And, it was really interesting from my perspective. And I've had a lot of colleagues in the naturopathic world who say those alternative interventions were working really well for their patient population, not for the clients that we saw. And it could totally be self-selected, that people who didn't get better came to us after taking, hydroxychloroquine or whatever. But it was really tough because the lack of cohesion in the medical system about it meant that there weren't clear parameters on how to do it, and people were self-treating, right? So it's possible that the naturopaths who knew what they were doing, how to use, these other drugs, were getting better results. But we saw a lot of people who actually were not doing well, who were having really terrible side effects because of it. Right. Anyway, so what was amazing was finding those characteristic symptoms, a lot of which came from the dreams, right? And a lot of times in acutes, people don't ask about a dream. I remember this one period, we called it the fire and ice period, where it was still wintertime. Oh, this might have been the second year. Multiple clients who were going out into the snow, and their head was so hot, the only way they could feel good was they would put their head in the snow. Right? I mean, that was just insane. But, when you see these symptoms a handful of times, they become characteristic and part of the picture. And so then what we would do is, sometimes Jeremy would send me an email, and the subject line would just say 102. In other words, you've got a lot of stuff going on, because he was doing those webinars. I mean, these really comprehensive webinars, and we would be providing, symptoms from our clinical experience. But, he needed it to be synthesized in that way. And sometimes, it was just like, dogged to collect it. And another thing, and actually this is something that I think a lot about when I reflect on what happened, is that there's a real ethical thing that comes up. And I'm not talking about like, there are a lot of ethical issues that come up when you're working in, a modality that sits on the, on the fringe. But the thing that was really hard was trying to explain to practitioners who didn't grok the Hahnemann's epidemic theory, that they wanted to treat everything individually, when in reality, you would repertorize every case, but you would look at it in the context of the larger pool of remedies, and you might make a leap. So, for example, there was a period of time when plutonium nitricum was solving a bunch of cases, and I had a few. Fire and ice, exactly. And I had a couple of great cases, and at one of our team meetings, I realized that there are people who just did not feel comfortable in stepping outside of treating individually because of they could see pulsatilla or something. And it's like, okay, I get it, because that's an appropriate individual prescription, but inside of a larger totality, right? The individual totality is not relevant when you're working on a collective disease. And it was too hard to sell for some people. Yeah.
And can I go off down a cul-de-sac?
Please do.
We're turning left for a minute, because over the last year, the articles have started to be written, and I think similar to ourselves, that for the small research teams that we've got, it just takes a long time to crunch the numbers,
right, get
the data in order. I mean, are you going to talk about the data and the data collection and some of the dramas? Good, because I think that is a teaching. Anyway, I'm distracting myself.
No. But remember, because I have a distinct memory. It was during the pandemic, and Parker came, and we were sitting outside.
That's right.
And going through every single case. It was August 2021.
No, 2020.
2020. And going through every single case that we had, trying to figure out how to get to the next step, right? Yep. I mean, it was, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Having PTSD.
Yeah, exactly. Well, me too, because, I felt a lot of pressure that, we desperately needed information. And at one stage, all I could provide for you were 305 cases that we knew. I was
so upset. Not at you. I was upset about the reality of, holy macaroni, we've seen all of these cases, but having clean data that is irrefutable.
Anyway, the point that I was going to make before I distracted myself
and I helped,
was that the papers that are just starting to be written have a number of are all written by people that do not have your perspective. In other words, the teams that have written those papers, say the Clifford folks, there's 3 papers now that they've written about their 1,000 cases or whatever it is, and it's all about the repertorizations.
Well, that would make sense. That's there. So Clifford is a research initiative inside of the Zeus and Radar Opus platform. I mean, it's bigger than that, but I think that's an easy way to do it. And actually so to that perspective, right? So one of the things that we were really challenged by was data collection to be able to provide data to the different research initiatives, because everybody wanted it in a different way, right? So the AIH wanted one thing, Clifford wanted something else.
Oh, I forgot
Remember
about that? We submitted hundreds of cases. Hundreds of hours of volunteer labour went into
6 platforms that we were contributing to.
Yeah, there was the NUNM, National University of Natural Medicine. There was Clifford, there was AIH, there was us, and there was another one. Oh my goodness, bad memory. Well, I mean, a memory. I wonder what happened to all of those cases.
I don't know.
I mean, we are still by far the largest contributor of North American cases to Clifford.
Yeah. But everyone has, this is the
stop.
thing with research, because everyone has their own, you ask a research question for a reason. And so it would make sense that Cliffacall, which is working with, repertory software, is looking for predictive outcomes, right? Or, right? I mean, so that's really different than what we were doing. And also, we made a determination early on to not focus on the remedy. And I'm really glad about that.
That's good.
Yeah, I really am. I think that there could be...
We have all of that data.
Oh, totally. And it's just, it's complicated because we were looking at it through the lens of Hahnemann's, theory of epidemics. I don't even want to call it a theory. Application of principles regarding epidemics is a better way to put it.
All right.
Isn't it? So that idea, first of all, as I mentioned before, really difficult to get everybody on board with. Also, it needed to be managed, and I wish that we had done that going further. But I'll so talk about why in terms of the evolution of what we did. But I want to go back to something which is in this moment of PTSD, I was also in my second semester of grad school when all this happened, right? Because I started in September of 2019. So I was in my second semester of grad school. So I had a heavy course load at the same time. And everybody was, doing Netflix and chill. And I remember just feeling this
I was making sourdough bread.
You were making sourdough. Yeah, thank God. Because, yeah, but that was...
Well, and you were?
Exhausted.
Yeah, you were humping it.
I was really exhausted. I mean, our team worked not just me, like all of us, the practitioner team, the admin team, the data team. It was intense. Anyway, okay, so going forward, so what happened though, there was a big evolution, right? So we had Home Foundation from 2015, and we did stuff, and we were busy, but it wasn't this huge focus. It was sort of like the seat of our clinical operations, and we had our research office, and it was whatever. And then comes COVID, and it was like, holy macaroni, everything was about Home Foundation, because all of a sudden, all the things that we do came into play at the same time. So the provision of clinical care, right? And remember, I mean, I was going to say, who could forget, but in actuality, when you talk to people in different parts of the United States, including some of our students, people had different experiences of COVID. And some of it was, cultural, regional, governmental. But it was also reality, that there were certain pockets that were hit and other places where, people didn't even need to really wear masks, right? So at the time, at the outset, all of a sudden, everything that we had put in place, I was so grateful that we already had a 501c3, that we already had, we had infrastructure in place that all we had to do was scale up and then add in the research component for acute care, right? That's where...
We had supervision, we had processes, we had all of the... We actually were pretty quick to get our closed... Excel spreadsheets together. Yeah. I mean, it took a couple of months, but yeah.
But, and just think about that, because if you didn't have that without it, it would have been impossible. And I think that's why we were able to share with other countries so easily, because it just existed. And it was replicate it and use it. And that was, we were really lucky in that way. So we had the infrastructure for providing clinical care. We already had a teaching clinic. Right? We had been doing research and collecting data. We were already using the MyCon and so on and so forth. We already had sort of formats in place for acute cases and so forth, right? And we also had, our materials. We were, focused on, we've always remained, focused on Hahnemannian homeopathy. So all those things were in place. And and the other thing is we had a portal to collect money, right? That was another thing. So we were able to, in homeopathy, of course, it's like the perfect telehealth medicine, right? So we had all this in place. So you've got people who were in parts of the country where the medical system was fully tapped out and ambulances are arriving and someone's got an O2 sat of 86 or 82 and they're like, sorry, you're not sick enough. Go back up to your apartment in New York City and hope for the best. And one of the things that, that I've talked about in some of the, presentations I've gotten to give over the years about this is that moment. And I'll never forget, it was with Parker. She had a case it was the first perilous case that we saw where we thought this person might not make it. They have no access to medical care and it's on us. And usually, in homeopathy, the one thing that a good homeopath knows when to refer. Get somebody into the medical system, get them, get them whatever intervention that they need if it's an emergency. But when that's not available, whoa, right? So there was this point where we realized that it was on us. We didn't have the fallback that first, maybe even a year, right? It was terrifying. So that was a big deal. Anyway, I was talking about how we had the capacity to receive funds. It was all donation based. Now we have the suggested donation for the acute clinic. We'll talk about that in a sec, but it was all donation based. And so it didn't take long for us to, just get everything set up with Square and so forth. And my gosh, all of the things that we did to serve clients, like we had people who were able to translate. We had cases that were being taken in Yiddish and in Spanish, right?
That's right. I remember there was the Hebrew flowchart.
Yeah.
I remember that one.
That was for the Satmar community in Brooklyn. They're an Orthodox Jewish community that is, I refer to it as like the Amish of Hasidic Judaism, where, no computers and so forth. So it's like, the amount of work we had to do on our end to get consent. So we actually had somebody would read the consent form for them.
Yep.
And then they would record. We had a special Google phone line. We would record the consent before we would provide care. And then we were having to get people remedies. I remember Rebecca Azzarelli got a kit to a woman in that community so that they could get remedies to people. We were really lucky that in the community in Brooklyn where I work, they have a dispensary that's been there for 40 years. And
what's the name?
Ms. Bongart.
Yes,
she's amazing, and it's over 40 years. And I'll never forget when we realized, because you would go get a remedy, $5 cash in a Ziploc bag, and you would put it through the mail slot on the one door, and then go around to another door to collect the remedy. And it was like, when are they going to open all of those? Like, is the room full of Ziploc, baggies with $5 in each one, right? But that was incredible because what we were able to do was get remedies to her to get them to the community. And then there was getting remedies through sort of the underground network that we did. So somebody, I forget who it was, created a map. So what we did was we went out to the community to, like, on all the social media groups and everything, and said, if you have remedies to share, get in touch with us. Because remember, like, everything's closed. Yeah. And the pharmacies ran out of pellets. Remember? Because
that's the worst.
The worst. The pharmacies ran out of pellets for a different reason, because there was they're coming to take away my homeopathy. And so all the consumers bought out all the remedies. Now the practitioners, during a pandemic, can't provide care. So we found a workaround.
Really smart.
So we reached out to everybody. We had an unpublished page on our website. People could register, give an inventory of what they were willing to share, their zip code. Were they willing to travel to take remedies? And then we had a map. How far would you travel? Mm-hmm. And then we had a map with pins dropped in it. It was like a heat map that would say who had what remedies. So you could just do a search in a zip code, find out who was closest. And there were people who were like loading up their kids in a minivan and driving 3 hours to take remedies to people. Yeah. It was amazing. Yeah. It was amazing. I wonder if I should talk about that at the Jack.
Damn right, of course. Are you kidding? That's because I've heard Paul Hersky talk recently about this, but also way back. And there was an influenza outbreak that was kind of miserable. It must have been
20. Wait, we had one in
2008, 9, something like that.
No, it was 2012 or 13.
I heard him talk about this.
Okay.
But I remember him just saying the homeopaths, they're lazy, they're not organised, they never show up, for this situation.
Our people showed up.
Damn,
and
Paul.
then all the people showed up.
All the people.
It was amazing. I mean, the stories, I remember Parker features so prominently in my COVID memories. She was just like on the scene. So Parker was living in New York City, and people who know New York, she was living like on Avenue C. And
East Village.
In the East Village, and in this building that was from the outside looking a little dodgy. And people would come to get remedies, and so Parker would put on a jacket, like a nice jacket, all masked up, with her brown bag with a remedy to take to somebody who's coming by in a taxi.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! And then we found out that there were services in New York, well, actually in various parts of the country, where different not-for-profits were delivering medicine, and we were like, well,
why not?
Why not? And so we just, got ourselves registered with these services, and we had free delivery of remedies to people. I forgot about that. That was amazing. So many people were sharing remedies, and it was unbelievable.
It's kind of it's 4 years ago.
It was 4 years ago.
The only thing that happens 4 years ago on a regular basis are World Cups and Olympics.
Yeah.
And, you think back, do I remember anything about the Tokyo Olympics?
I'll tell you what.
The Rio Olympics?
I mean, I think the people on the HHN team.
Wow.
There's, we definitely talk about the PTSD. I mean, I'm glad that we didn't know what we were in for.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, to go in knowing would have been really difficult. I mean, I imagine like the nurses, the traveling nurses and doctors who went to the places where where there was a real need. They knew what they were getting into,
Okay. That's what I was talking with Najia about the other day.
Yeah.
Her
She's
story
one
about
of our
COVID.
neighbors who's a surgeon.
Her story is very different, and of course it was more focused on how well did we do, and I was going, are you kidding?
Wow.
And the Nobel Prize and for pen, and I'm going, gee, there's a whole lot of collateral damage that's not being spoken about here, because that was our experience.
Totally.
The edges of the community.
That's for us. I remember running into her doing walks in the Arboretum, standing 6 feet apart, talking about, and her curiosity as to like, what could you possibly be doing?
How are you contributing?
I don't say much. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yesterday, we, what I'm going to talk about. So we need to get a new car for a variety of reasons. We're getting rid of my lovely VW SUV. It's at the point where it's got good trade-in value, and it's either keep it for forever or trade it in. So we're having this whole conversation, are we going to just have a pickup truck? Which I really, anyway, but we were...
Me too.
I know. Just one vehicle and a pickup truck. I have to make sure that I can still have my superpower of parallel parking.
So that's tomorrow.
But right. Anyway, so we had to go to the dealership yesterday morning, and when we pulled up, we were having a laugh. We were because we were talking about COVID, and we were talking about that. At one point during COVID, I went to get my car inspection done or some service done, and I guess I was well overdue for my inspection, but like I hadn't left the house in however many months.
Yeah.
And the guy gave me a serve at the desk in the service part of the VW dealership, and he's like giving me a hard time, and I said, it just came out of my mouth, I was like, I'm a frontline worker. And I thought, in some ways, I just told a giant lie, but in some ways, it was totally true.
Yeah.
I just,
from
my house, from my house,
which I never leave,
which I haven't left in months. But anyway, it was real, and he apologized.
Oh,
yeah,
nice one.
Yeah, it just came out like it wasn't, and I think I was so exhausted at that point, and so in it that I just anyway. All right, that's it. One more thing. Do we have time for just one more little thing?
And
and that is the silver lining in all this. which is, we set this thing up and it was just to be for COVID. So in the beginning, that's all we were treating. It's like somebody comes in with, COVID and blah, blah, blah. And one little side thing is the hardest cases that we treated were not the sickest people. They were the people who did too much homeopathy, like not good homeopathy beforehand. That was a lesson. That was a huge lesson, right? Those people who came in and
we will drill into that.
We have to. Well, that's part of that new research thing. You remember the woman? I'm sure I told you this lady, she comes in, she had taken all these remedies, and the last remedy she had taken was guacam 10M. And I said to her, I was like so frustrated.
I said, syphilis?
I did. I said, what do you have, syphilis? And I thought, oh my God, I just said that. Like, I should not have said that.
Yeah.
And she said, no, why would you ask that? And I said, because the only time I've ever heard that remedy being used is for active syphilis, and which is not entirely true, and it was 10M, guacam 10M. First of all, I don't think we have guacam 10. Who is guacam 10M? And where did that come from? Anyway, it's beside the point. But the silver lining is that once everything got settled, we realized that people were now coming to us for all sorts of acute care.
Yeah.
And one of my dreams in homeopathy came true, which was to have an acute care service, which is really hard to pull off because you need to have sick people and practitioners at the same time. And you don't always have homeopathy practitioners available to treat acute cases or people who can do it. Anyway, so...
You're welcome.
We transitioned from being just, helping people with COVID to taking on acute stuff, all kinds of acute things. And that meant that we could offer an acute care internship at HE. And then once we got that underway, we were able to then have an externship. And Azadeh was our first extern. And
she was too.
She was. And I'll never forget talking with her. I was doing a walk in the Arboretum with the dog, and we were having a conversation. She was, I think, about to take her check exam and said, when I'm finished, I'm pretty sure at the time you're right, I would love to participate. And I was like, this is amazing because you can give us feedback. What is the experience like from the outside? We know because we're homegrown.
I forgot that.
Right? Remember? But nobody ever sort of came in from the outside and was like, y'all are crazy, or this is really great. And she's German, and she's a systems person. I was like, you're perfect for this job. And now here we are a couple of years later, she's our clinic manager. So now we've got externs from all different parts of, the country, who are homeopaths, who are volunteering their time. And, so there's a huge silver lining, right? We are able to provide acute care. We now have the extended acutes, right? So extended acute is like, somebody comes in with an ear infection or upper respiratory infection, or, they fell down or whatever. It's like those things have you expect them to be over in a couple days to a week or so. But some things take longer, Sometimes people are dealing with something that's probably related to their chronic case, but you don't want to say to them, you're coming in for an uncomplicated acute. Oh, and now we want to upsell you to, getting chronic care.
Give us another $50.
Right. So, that feels like it almost, I think to people outside of the language of homeopathy use, it could feel like a bait and switch, which doesn't really feel good. Yeah. Right. Once people know the quality of care, then they make their choice. Anyway, so we were able to do that, which means that we can now offer this same system to other groups. And I really want to encourage other homeopathy communities to create, to just partner with us, use everything that we've got in place. Just give us back your data, share admin, get the data back, because the more we can do this, the more information we can collect. Then we've got this research on your side with, big data sets, right? And the last part is, because I'm thinking about the meeting I have coming up in
10 minutes.
Now, I pushed it back 10 minutes. It's on comfort care. So, so now we have this infrastructure, which is amazing, and it works. All the things and all the trial and error and all of the people who are, we're just populated with Capricorns and Virgos. Get her done and get her done well. And now we've got this infrastructure in place. So we've got this palliative and end of life care project that's going to launch. In May. The course goes live in May. It's 3 sessions, and then after people do the course, they can apply to work on the helpline, which is it's a paid thing. It's not like, everything that we do, it's volunteer run on HHN, but the comfort care, because it's a level of specialty, is, everybody gets paid for the work, which is amazing. And we got some grant money to get all the systems in place and the research set up. So that's really exciting. So that's going to go live in probably soft launch at the end of May.
End of May.
End of May. But that is all happening because of this work. Don't you love that?
I am amazed. Hearing the story again,
Yeah.
having lived through the story, having observed it, I just am astonished. You deserve a medal.
This
Or at
team,
least
the World Changer team.
a holiday.
I'll take a holiday. I don't know what I'd do with a medal. I don't really want a medal, but a holiday, definitely. Tahiti. Just kidding. We're doing a group. We invited everybody who's ever participated in the helpline to come tonight.
We make party.
We're going to do a photo.
I'm going to make you a cocktail.
How many people? Oh, and Lisa will be here. Our friend Lisa Amarin is going to be in town. It's going to be a total homeo party. Once you become a homeopath, friends come and stay. You go stay with your friends. She's going from staying with us to visiting Andre Sane. It's going to be amazing.
Well, that's very cool.
Yeah, it is really cool.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right.
This was fun.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
4 years, HHN. Rock and roll.
I can't believe it.
All right. Hey, folks, take care.
No, you usually say, take the best care.
Meanwhile,
At the BBC.
take the best care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Introducing Homeopathy, the film, will be screening this year at the Joint American Homeopathy Conference. To purchase tickets, you can go to introducinghomeopathy.com/JAHC exclusive. Please choose Home Foundation as your ambassador after purchase. See you there.